Help me, please help me in the comments. Ah! Your average Joe doesn't deserve to be discriminated against either. Me trying to convince myself to keep the book and I haven't even read the first chapter. Ah! That was a wild chapter. What's up, friends? I'm Jessica Nicole Dickerson, aka Jane D, and welcome back to another video. We are getting rid of more books. We're doing it. We're going hard. And since the last Unhaul video, if you didn't see, I've been doing a couple Unhaul videos recently. I have more books to add. I went even harder. When I turned off the camera, I really thought about it. And I was like, okay, if I want my shelves to reflect the current reader that I am, I had some other books to add to that list. I personally, if you didn't see my last video, want my bookshelves to kind of reflect a lot of the books I would reread now. Like, oh, I either have very nostalgic feelings towards that book and it just excites me, like books that really excite me. That's what I want on my shelves. So mostly 4 or 5 star books. So I have a lot of like 3-star books that I am unhauling that I liked, but I don't necessarily need them. It's such a privilege to have such a huge collection. Don't get me wrong, I'm grateful, but I also worked very hard to earn all of these, worked hard, spent my money on them, and now I really want to spend the time being more conscious, buying used books only, and also if I'm not going to reread the book and the book doesn't excite me, I want to rehome it to someone who it will excite them. That's the kind of mission that I'm on. But let's get into this stack. It's gotten bigger since last we spoke. Let's go. So if you haven't seen any of my Unhaul videos before, there was a challenge I did last year where I tried a chapter of the book and see if I still would want to read it, just as my reading tastes have changed. And also, a lot of books in this specific pile have been recommended either from YouTubers or bookstagrammers online that I really like. So I've been holding on to these books, but I haven't really read them yet, and I'm just like not excited to read them, which I know. Oh my god, mood reader issues. So yeah, I'm going to do it. And I think let's start off with the book that people are probably going to be the most polarized over. Let's just do it. So you can yell at me in the comments, go for it. I will delete any hate comments, but you feel free to express yourself down below. We have A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I know, she's a polarizing author. So let's dive into this. I feel like people will scream at me, but it is what it is. I have no idea what this is about, and I've heard some people love this more than Throne of Glass, and that's why I personally got it, because I heard it's more of an adult romance fantasy vibe, which is what I really enjoy. So I am kind of expecting to enjoy this, but I'm not gonna lie, I did also purchase this because it's popular and I wanted to make a video of me reading it. Let's be real, when you have a YouTube channel or a bookstagram, you do feel inclined to purchase these really popular books because people are talking about them, and you know that if I were to put this on the thumbnail and put it in a video, people would watch it. So I also have that issue when it comes to book buying, where I'll buy things for a video because I think you guys would enjoy it, but then it's like my reading taste doesn't actually align. Am I forcing myself to read something I don't want to read? Crazy times. Let me read the first sentence to you because I love judging the first sentence. I'm a hoe for that. Chapter 1. The forest had become a labyrinth of snow and ice. I mean, this is an average first sentence. Now I'm going to read the first chapter and be really hard on it. See if I actually want to read this book or if I just want the internet fame of reading this book. I'm being honest. I'm going to be real honest with y'all. So, let's see. Okay, I just read the first chapter of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'm intrigued. I really like the way that the hunting was depicted and her hunger. Definitely adult fantasy in the language, but she's like really focused on her task. There was a mention of a male character, so I'm interested to see like who that is, what their history is. So I think this piqued my interest enough, but I will say it doesn't give me like the immediate excitement that like a YA fantasy does, you know, where they like leave you on like a cliffhanger or something. Like I'm thinking of An Ember in the Ashes and things like that, where it moves really quickly. But the chapter was only 6 pages long, surprisingly too. So I personally think I'm going to hold on to this. So everyone can yell at me in the comments whether you agree or disagree if I should keep it or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts, honestly. Just, you know, maybe be nice, because it is, we're trying to build a friendly community here. So I think I'm going to hold on to this. I do think it would make for an interesting video to read this, at least the first book. I don't know if I'd read all of the series. It is a trilogy that's going to be extended soon, I think. I don't know. It's like not top priority, but it definitely, like, it just intrigues me. And I love murder. I love violence. I love adult fantasy because of those elements, and it's all fictional, obviously. And I love fairies, and I love that in the story it seems like fairies like eat people, which is just really cool. So there was just those few elements that I'm like, yes, let's see some violent fairies, you know. That's just the vibe it gave. So I think I'm gonna hold on to that, so don't hate me. Next book on this list, which again, I feel like everyone's gonna hate me for all of these choices. So please tell me in the comments below whether or not I should keep them. I'm gonna have a decision at the end of this video, but your comments could also sway me after I post this. So I have Son of the Storm. I think I personally bought this because of Mina Reads. There's always like a specific booktuber behind a lot of these books, which is just really funny to me personally. But yeah, this is a giant fantasy, a high fantasy. I don't actually know anything about this. Clever scholar at the cusp of achieving greatness, only he doesn't want it. Oh, and the city's immigrants are sworn to secrecy. It just sounds so interesting. Me trying to convince myself to keep the book, and I haven't even read the first chapter. First chapter, we have someone's perspective, Danso, who was the guy in the back, who's our clever scholar on the cusp of greatness and doesn't want it because he wants to know about the world. Okay, first sentence. The rumors broke slowly, but spread fast, like brush fire from a rain cloud. Oh! What's the secret? See, that's a good first sentence in my opinion, because it piques an immediate question. I think a good book holds your attention, not just with the immediate action of what's happening, making me want to keep reading and find the answers to these little things. So I'm going to read the first chapter. Okay, I just read the first chapter, and I think it's interesting. I feel like the world is probably going to be the most interesting part about this, like why they have these insiders versus outsiders, and our main character is actually discriminated for being light-skinned. So to be considered a true pure citizen, you have to be of a darker complexion, and then if you're light-skinned, then it's like thought that you are less than because either your parents kind of probably mixed with an outsider who was light-skinned. That was an interesting element that I wasn't really expecting. And again, with fantasies, it's always interesting how they lean on racism and like prejudice to add layers of oppression, but they're not really, no offense, they're not creative about it. Like, I guess this is a creative take on being light-skinned as being less than, because that's like polluting the bloodlines and whatnot. So that's a kind of more unique taste, but it makes me think about how we still rely on things like racism to add flavor to fantasy. Like now this character is more oppressed because everyone's racist towards him. So the first chapter was really leaning on that, and him really struggling to get to this announcement ceremony, and I was more interested in the whispers and the secrets of why they are closing down borders and why they're so heavily guarded. Like, to not be able to leave your city, that's really, I don't know, I find that is a more interesting element than the racial element. I've read a lot of fantasies where, you know, people who are black are frowned upon, so I do think it's an interesting take to be more oppressed for being like mixed. I guess that does make sense, but it's just not a compelling storyline to me personally. But I do think I'm gonna keep it. Sorry. Mostly because I really want to figure out what the fridge is happening with this exclusionary, we're keeping everyone in the city. What's also interesting to me about this kind of racial depiction in these books is that normally, because these individuals, like our main character, are really smart, they're unworthy of this racist behavior. Like, it kind of proves that racism is wrong because it's like, I'm a great person, I'm well educated, I'm blah 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 blah, so I don't deserve this. But it's interesting to me because it's like, okay, but also your average Joe doesn't deserve to be discriminated against either. You know, why are only smart people being called out on as being like, oh, they shouldn't be treated like that? That's how it's always depicted in books. Does anyone else see that? That's how I kind of felt about Amari and the Knight brothers, that our main character was like the best of the best, but because she was black, she was frowned upon. It's like, yo, can we get some average black people who also don't deserve to be discriminated against? Because that's how I feel. Like, I feel like most of us are average. I'm not going to invent shit and be like well known for that. I'm just going to be your average brown girl, and I still don't deserve to be discriminated against. Those are the thoughts I had. This next book I also have because of a YouTuber, Alexandra Yang. I have really liked her other recommendations, and she really liked this, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll get this book. Haven't read it. I think the sequel's already out. So it is Sisters of the Snake, and it is co-authored. Really don't know anything about this. Let's see. A princess never falters. They think, they act, they succeed. I will play raw with all the might I have. I practice a grin that does not waver. One fit for a princess and a thief. Oh, I wonder what that's about. If you're a princess, why you gotta steal? I guess that's my question. But again, first in a series. Why do I have so many firsts in a series? I despise the heat. That's the first sentence, which, accurate. I mean, just kidding. I actually freaking love the heat. Please bathe me in sweat. I take that any day over the cold. Okay, this book is very much giving Aladdin meets An Ember in the Ashes, because there's conscription. We have our royalty who never leave the palace, and they have these kind of armed soldiers called charts, and they kind of punish the citizens as they see fit. One of our main girls, the perspective I was reading from, Rhea, I think is how you would say her name. Yeah, and the other perspective I think is going to be the princess. And I think they were separated at birth. So it's giving like Princess and the Pauper. We got these two girls who I assume are gonna like look alike and possibly be sisters. I wonder how I guessed that. I assume they're gonna be sisters. And the one perspective that I got, Rhea, she was in an orphanage until a year ago. She ran away, so she's now been stealing to feed herself. Her and her friend steal food and kind of scrape by, and they hate these charts, these armed guards who enforce these nameless laws, or these kind of meaningless laws. You clearly feel the disdain for the royals. Then a conscription list is dropped, so war is breaking out, and we are shocked to see that our main girl is on it. She's scared, which is very interesting. So I feel like there's a lot of interesting elements, and I'm interested to read interesting. How many times can I say interesting? I am intrigued to read the following perspective, the princess perspective, because I wonder if she's gonna feel trapped and that people use her. That's the vibe I'm predicting. So okay, I feel like I'm keeping all these books, my bad, but I do feel like I'm gonna hold on to this book because it offers a lot of interesting perspectives, and I do like that it's not embedded in Western culture. So I'm hoping there's a whole other facet of just interesting plot devices that are going to be used to carry on the story. Like, I wonder if they're going to switch places. I wonder if they're going to have to train each other. I wonder if they're going to try and play the system. I have questions, so I definitely want to read this and find out for myself. Next book is one that was gifted to me a long time ago, the Zodiac Legend. This is, I don't know if it's written by Stan Lee, but he is one of the authors tagged onto this, so I think that's why my family gifted it to me, because I love Stan Lee's work. Obviously, MCU, Marvel Comics, legendary such a profound just legacy, you know what I mean? Oh, funny, Zodiac Legacy. It's a Disney book, not really sure what this is about, to be honest, and it does have artwork in it, which I think is pretty cool. Ooh, adds an element. Oh my god, watch me not get rid of any of these books. I'm such a terrible... Oh no. Okay, that was a really cute first chapter, which is great. I'm happy I've done this challenge because I think it's excited me for a lot of these books that I hadn't really been excited for. So even if I don't unhaul anything from this particular pile, and I have my other pile that I will be unhauling, but at least like now I have new energy coming towards these books. Like, I'm actually excited to read this. This was a very like action adventure story, definitely reads like a comic book, and I feel like it's really cool because this is actually placed in China. Our lead is Chinese American and he's traveling abroad, and it seems really interesting. So I was excited because I kind of thought, I kind of thought it was going to be a whitewash story, just to be honest, Stanley, you know. I thought, even though it does have some other authors attached to it. So I didn't realize. So I kind of really liked that element. And it was just like this kid is on this adventure and this tour guide is being very weird and shady, and something bad starts to happen, and the kid, or not kid, Steven, our main protagonist, I don't know how old he is. I assume he's a kid, or he's like 18, 19. He gets excited because there's this screaming, and he's kind of like filled with like adventure now. He's like, I'm gonna go solve this. I know I shouldn't, I'm in a foreign country, I shouldn't be doing this, but he does it anyway, and he's so excited for it. And it just, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of twists and turns, and it's a super easy read. I mean, the print is so large and there's illustrations, so I feel like this would be an exciting book to read, and I haven't heard anyone talk about it. I got 7 other books to unhaul, but apparently these books, I don't know. They are intriguing. I can see why I purchased them, but at least the Legacy, or the Zodiac Legacy, is a standalone. The other ones are like first in series, so stressed because then I have to keep up with them, and then I'm like, I still haven't finished An Ember in the Ashes. Still haven't finished The Black Witch Chronicles. Still haven't finished so many series. And now I have just this stack of series that I want to read. Oh my god, is this video is both exciting me to read but also stressing me out, and that's why I want to unhaul these books, because I'm like, there's so much to read and so little time. A little pity party for myself, you know. Life is hard. Next up, and one of the books that was mentioned in the comments being that one of you guys enjoyed this book, so we'll see if I end up unhauling it or not. I'm gonna read the first chapter and see if I like the writing style and if the first chapter piques my interest. It is Gods of Jade and Chateau. So this is a standalone. It's a standalone. I know it's influenced by Mayan culture, I believe, and it's placed in Mexico City. So it's fantasy, which I love, with a sprinkle of diversity, which I love. If you haven't been to my channel and you don't realize that, like, yes, I read a lot of popular books, but I also love just a hint of diversity. Opening up my worldview, pretty please. The least I could do. Okay, I'm gonna read the first chapter. Let's see. First sentence. Some people are born under a lucky star, while others have their misfortune telegraphed by the position of the planets. I like the information, but is that first sentence super gripping or entertaining? No. But you know what? It's okay. Not all first sentences can obviously depict what the whole book is going to be about. Okay, this is so hard because the synopsis sounds really interesting. A young woman and the Mayan death god embark on a life-changing journey of a once-in-a-lifetime fairy tale inspired by Mexican folklore. Though the synopsis sounds really interesting, and I know someone in the comments said that they really enjoyed this book, I personally don't think well, just the first chapter didn't excite me, if that makes sense. We hear a lot about Cassiopeia, her family, their expectation, how she feels about it. Like, the other books kind of made me either laugh or cringe or just sparked questions that made me want to read to chapter 2, and this one personally just didn't for me. Obviously, there are other people who take interest in different things and other things will intrigue them. Like, the writing of this was very beautiful. The family, I think if I cared more about maybe her and her family, which obviously if I read, it would become more interesting. But because I have so many books that I'm so excited for, and this just didn't pique my interest, I am going to unhaul it. I feel like a lot of people are going to be angry with me, but that's okay. Reading tastes are personal. You just don't be mean in the comments. Next book that we have on this list is Nocturne, which is, I don't think it's actually a very popular book currently, though I heard a lot of people talking about it, and I think it's specifically because of one bookstagram, which I will link below. One of my great friends really loves this book, and it's so funny because she did comment on my Unhaul video going, you need to read Nocturne. She's been saying that for so long. I feel like Nocturne is like one of her favorite books. So I definitely purchased this book and have been holding on to it because of her. But I just haven't gotten around to reading it. So I'm hoping that either reading the first chapter will excite me, or if it's just not for me, then I can hopefully give it to someone who will be just as excited as she is to read it. You know, that's the vibe. That's what I'm aiming for. Okay, the first sentence is, a prince always comes home. Huh? The future prince. The prince without a future. Interesting. Yeah, I actually don't know the synopsis of this. To Finn Vow, magic has two things: a knife to hold under the chin of anyone who crosses her, and a disguise she shrouds into as easily as others pull on cloaks. I have thoughts. I mean, is it terrible that I want to hold on to this just because my friend really likes it? Because that first chapter wasn't too intriguing in my opinion, and it was just the boy's perspective, the prince, and for him, he was grieving the loss of his brother and like went away from home even though he's the prince and now the heir, but he's realized that his brother's not dead, which was a really huge peak of interest for me. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But obviously now the story is like, okay, we'll find this guy, we gotta figure out what happened, and that is where the intrigue lies. Less so about like the first chapter was really about his family kind of embracing him and being like, oh, yada yada, like, I'm glad you're home. It doesn't seem like anyone else thinks that the real heir, that the older prince is still alive. It just so happens to be our main protagonist. So I'm like, are you wrong, sir? Are you just not, you know, accepting grief? I'm intrigued to see what the F actually happened to his brother. I do like character-driven stories for the most part if I enjoy that point of view, if I enjoy that character. Not that they have to be necessarily likable, but just an engaging story, an engaging point of view. And that being the first chapter, it just didn't stand out too much. But damn, am I gonna keep it just because? Ugh. Help me, please help me in the comments. Ah! Whew. Okay, we're on to our last book, which I think I'm gonna unhaul, question mark, we'll see. I've heard mixed things about this book, Black Sun. So I've heard mixed things, and I know the second book in this series has come out. Let's see. A god will return when the earth and sky converge under the black sun in a holy city. Meanwhile, a ship launches for a distant city. Da 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 da. Okay, the young man, blind, scarred, and choked and cloaked in destiny. How is a character cloaked in destiny? And I will say, this book has the best, like, first and second sentence I've experienced in a while. I personally really like it. So the sentences are, today he would become a god. His mother had told him so. I don't know why I think that is so effing funny. Like, I'm like, today he becomes a god because your mother said so. That's just the energy it gives. So I'm going to read This first chapter, I don't know. I wonder if I should go to Goodreads and see what people are saying. Ah. That was a wild chapter. I thought for sure that I would be like, okay, I don't want to read this, or like I don't need this necessarily in my library, but that was wild. Okay, so there was a very super weird relationship between this mom and this kid, and she believes he's gonna be a god, and she did all these weird things, mutilating him, made him stare into the sun, and then blindfolded him and stitched his eyes fucking closed, and now he's traveling to a city so he can become a god. And then she threw herself off a balcony while leaving him really clueless, besides the fact that she's told him that his real name, his god name, and that he's going to be a god and that he needs to go to this town to become a god. That's like his purpose, and I guess her purpose was just to prepare him for that while keeping him completely uneducated. That was just so incredibly wild that I literally can't unhaul this, because I'm just like, what? I was thinking at first, like the first few pages, I was like, this is a really weird dynamic between mother and son, because he was like really relying on her. Like he kind of wanted to cry, he kind of like just didn't know what was happening. He had vomited that morning, like he was so fearful, and his mom was kind of babying him a lot. So that fun dynamic from the first two sentences kind of fell into a very creepy place, but then it just went from creepy to like, what the actual F, you know? So I have questions. That's it for today's video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found some books that you want to read or don't want to read. I think that's why it's important to share elements of books that you like and don't like, so that way people can piece apart like, oh, I actually like this element you don't like, so that's a good recommendation, and vice versa. So I think it's very healthy to share the likes and dislikes of all types of books. And I'm just growing a lot as a reader, I feel like, and I'm happy that I'm trying to rein in all my book buying. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you got some entertainment, some book recommendations, something out of it. And yeah, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Okay, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye! And yes, I was wearing PJ shorts this whole time. I feel like you could very obviously see them, but like, fun fact, we love PJs.